Yeah, well, that's the way it works.
Yeah, it's okay. So, what we did yesterday was just introduction, and today is going to begin the first part of chapter 8. So a little background. The narration of Dhruva's life comes very, very early during the process of creation. The Vedic picture of creation, mentioned yesterday, it moves in cycles. There's creation mated for some time, withdrawal of the creation, resting period of the whole cosmic manifestation, and then for an equal duration of time that resting, and then again creation. So we're at the very, very beginning of creation, because according to Srimad Bhagavatam itself, twice, it mentions that there are 10 topics. A little bit of detail. The Mahapuranas, of which Srimad Bhagavatam is one, they cover 10 topics. The Puranas cover 5 topics. And the Upa-Puranas cover some combination of a few. So there's 10 topics. And the first 3 we touched on yesterday. Sarga and Visarga and Manvantara. Sarga means what Vishnu does in the process of creation. And Visarga means what Brahma does after Vishnu does what Vishnu does. Brahma assists, and he does the engineering to put the universe together. And then a third topic is there's Manus. They're lawgivers of mankind, and there's different Manus, and there's lineages of kings from those Manus, and that's one of the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're in the Manu topic, and in the beginning part of this verse, this chapter, there's some further subparts of the sub-creation, or what Brahma does. So, going back to Canto 3, this is going to be Canto 4, chapters 8 through 12. So, in Canto 3, the two that are having the conversation is Maitreya Muni, great sage, and Vidura. And Vidura is Yamaraj, who took his birth to take part in Krishna's pastimes, and so he's a great authority. Yamaraj is one of the 12 great authorities, Mahajans. So it's Vidura and Maitreya having a conversation. Vidura is posing questions, and top of the list of his questions is, please describe creation, how Vishnu does what he does. Because by the time Vidura is having this conversation, it's already in Manu number 7 out of 14. So what I mean to say here is, it's not chronological, but it's very logical. It's not that everything is being told in sequence of time. So, for example, in the beginning of this, section, which is dealing with Manu number 1, even before Manu number 1 appears, the elements of creation are made available. One of those elements of creation is the bad stuff. Because with creation, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. There's piety and there's impiety. We're going to see a yin-yang symbol shortly.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. This is a place of duality. And so wherever there's good, there's bad. wherever there's this, there's that, because it's a place of dwelling. So it's Brahma's responsibility to bring in the forces of destruction along with the forces of creation. It's just part of the place. So that's already happened, chronologically, that's already happened. It's going to be mentioned in the beginning of this chapter, not as a chronological sequence, but it's part of the topic for this discussion. The topic for this discussion is the first 24 verses of chapter 8, and not that our acharyas called it, the section is very naturally organized, and I gave this title, React or Respond. Now some of you are familiar with that language. It's a people that do counseling of people that go into negative emotion space. They try to train them how they can respond rather than react to situations that are unpleasant. There are situations that are unpleasant. There's situations that are pleasant. And when those unpleasant situations happen, you have a choice. This is one of our Gita values topic, is Icha. We have choices. We have free will choices. You can choose not necessarily the events that are going to happen in our life, but we can choose how to respond to the events that happen in our life. The events that happen in our life have to do with karma. And how we respond has to do with guna, or quality, mode of nature. We don't have to operate on the dark ones. We can operate on the lighter and brighter ones. So that's what this is. It's, in one sense, it's a simple Bhagavad Gita lesson expanded into the form of a history. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a Purana, and Purana means history, ancient history. And the Puranas, through the course of narrating a history, they're explaining a philosophy point. The philosophy points are within Vedanta Sutra and the Upanishads, etc. And those points are also there embedded in the histories. So this is a history of Dhruva, and there's our yin-yang symbol.
It's the nicest one I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you. It's right on the internet. I just
Yeah.
gathered it. So, why do we come to the material world? The answer is found in Bhagavad Gita. Raga, Dvesha, Samutena, Dvandava Mohena Bharata. Dvandava is this duality. Mohena means we become bewildered by the duality of desire and hate. Prabhupada explains it this way. It's like seeing a king sitting on a throne, and one of the citizens goes, harumph, I want to sit on the throne. But there's a problem. That's the raga. I want to sit on the throne. There's somebody already sitting on the throne. So that's the dvesha. I have animosity towards that person who's seated on the throne. I want to sit on the throne. So, similarly, using that as a little explanation, there is a source of everything, and everything goes to that source of everything, and I want to be that person. That's the raga. But the problem is, there's already somebody who's that person. So I feel dvesha towards the source of everything, the supreme, the enjoyer of everything. And because of those two, raga, dvesha, one takes birth. We come into this world because we have an attitude problem towards the source of everything. Every one of us that has one of these, a material body, Prabhupada has explained, it's like a flag that says, I've got envy and hatred. and the flag is flapping. We have to overcome it, but as long as we're wanting the happiness part of illusion, that is, happiness apart from the Supreme, as long as we want that happiness part, we're buying ourselves into the duality program. It's the nature of the place. There's day and there's night, and it's wet and there's dry, and there's happy and there's sad, and there's pleasure and there's pain, there's male and female, there's whatever there is, there's its opposite, and you want something and you're going to get its opposite too. We don't like the unpleasant events, and not liking the unpleasant events leads to the emotion connected to the event that was unwanted, and so we have a negative emotion, and we struggle with our negative emotions. That's their react. And then there's an alternative. The alternative, the ultimate alternative is you go to the place of higher consciousness, and then duality doesn't exist there. But in the transition stage of going to that place of higher consciousness, you stay in the mode of goodness, and you operate on higher principles of life. It's a choice. You don't have to operate on lower principles. We can operate on higher principles. So in this section, 1 through 24, we're going to get a picture of what the two look like, so we can follow the high road and avoid the low road. Okay, so while having already described the sub-creation of Brahma, now the Bhagavatam is going back to the sub-creation. It's already been covered, and the Manus have already appeared, or the first Manu, and his offspring, and so forth. So, the four great sages, the four great Kumara sages, headed by Sanaka, as well as Narada, Ribhu, Hamsa, Aruni, and Yati, all sons of Brahma, did not live at home, but became Urdhva Reta, or Naishtika Brahmacharis, unadulterated celibates. The four Kumaras are certainly celebrated. Here they're at the gates of Vaikuntha, they're very much enjoying the lotus feet of Lord Narayana. And the others mentioned, these are all directly born from Brahma, the body of Brahma. And we're going next to verse number 5, you'll see why. My dear Vidura, Maitreya speaking to Vidura, I have summarily explained the causes of devastation. So we're going to go back to the causes of devastation. One who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. So why is it that hearing causes of devastation washes sinful contamination from the soul? In the purport for this text 5, Prabhupada writes that devastation takes place because of irreligion and falsity. And here's an explanation. From Brahma, he has a son named adharma, irreligion. And he has a daughter, Risha, which is the meaning of falsity. So they have this incestuous brother-sister relationship, and they produce children. Damba, or bluffing, and Maya, or cheating, and the next offspring are greed and cunning and anger and envy and quarrel and harsh speech and death and fear, not leading up, it's leading down. Excessive pain and hell. Now, these are forces of destruction that Brahma provides because along with creation, destruction is needed. It's just part of the creation process. So the question is asked by our acharyas, how is it that knowing all these things helps one become pious? It says, one who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes sinful contamination from the soul. So our Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that by knowledge one can avoid these items. Now, knowledge isn't enough, because even people that have knowledge make mistakes and do things they really shouldn't do because the modes of nature are stronger than their knowledge. So it's just, it increases piety to hear how this whole system is working. And I'm going to give you, at the end of class, a little handout sheet, and it's going to have the chart that you saw already, and the verses, and the BBT commentary, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, so that you can take a look at it. We're going to touch on it again twice in this discussion, so then you'll have a handout that you can take with you. And the request is, how does all of this, how do these items of destruction fit together, and how does it fit into this narration? So it's to take the information and bring it home, bring it inside a little bit. So the next 3 verses, this is the lineage of Dhruva. Those of you that were with us last night, you saw this slide. Dhruva's down here. Here's his father, Uttanapada. And Uttanapada has 2 queens, Suruchi and Suniti. Suniti gave birth first to Dhruva. Second queen gave birth next to Uttama. Uttanapada is a direct son of Swayambhuva Manu and his wife Shatarupa, and Brahma is the source of them. We'll do it this way. Brahma, Swayambhuva Manu, and Shatarupa had 2 sons. We heard about one of the 3 daughters in Canto 3, that's Devahuti. And her marriage to Kardama Muni and many things about their interaction, and 9 daughters were firstborn. The daughters were given to other sons of Brahma to help fill up the universe with good population. And Kapila was born as their son. But just to get a picture, because some of you are aware of how significant and important Kapila Dev is. There's 7-8 chapters just hit Kapila's teachings. They're first cousins. Lord Kapila and Dhruva are first cousins because Uttanapada's sister, Devahuti, is Kapila's mother, and Uttanapada's son is Dhruva. So who knows? Maybe they got together sometime. Maybe they knew each other, first cousins. Not a big population on the planet yet. I don't know of any narration that says they had interaction, but this gives you an idea. Very, very early in the process of creation. And here's the family tree. There's meant the first verse, there's no family tree for those that were not living. They're just like me. In my mother's family line, I was once shown a family tree that goes back, I don't know, umpteen generations. And when it comes to whose sons and daughters and who married whom and what their professions were and blah blah blah. I'm going to have a blank after my name. So there's an image of King Uttanapada, and he had a younger queen that was his favorite queen, and her name was Suruchi. And the elder, yet neglected, even abandoned queen was Suniti, and Sunita was Dhruva's mother. When Dhruva was a small boy, he made no distinction between the two. Although one was the favorite one, she was sitting in the palace, and Dhruva's mother was neglected, and she just was some distant place wherever she was doing. So the topic, react and respond, requires a little thoughtfulness on your part. Has it ever happened in your lifetime ever that someone mistreated you? And on the other hand, maybe you knowingly or unknowingly did something that hurt somebody else. It happens. And when either of those two happened, how did you feel and how did you respond to how you felt? So that's our discussion. And we're going to profile the two, react and respond. And the first reacting person is Suruchi. So the very next verse describes Dhruva saw his brother Uttama sitting on his father's lap. He's his younger brother, and he wanted to sit on his father's lap too. So he tried to climb up on his father's lap, and Suruchi said something very harsh. Not only she said it harsh, look at her body language. She's, I have a nickname for her. I call her Sue Nasty. Very nasty. So when the child, Dhruva Maharaj, was trying to get up on the lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious. She was envious because he's the firstborn son. That means he's going to become the king. He's going to sit on that throne someday. And she was envious because she wanted her son to sit on the throne someday. So because of her envy of this little boy, 5 years old, with great pride and spite. Now these are forces of destruction that were mentioned earlier in the chapter, and she's just an instrument of those forces of destruction. Now she could have said no. She could have made a different choice, but she very proud. She's the favorite queen. And he's the king of the whole planet. She's the favorite queen. He's very proud. She began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. So these two, commentary says, these two, envy and pride are two sides of the same coin. commonly. One who is proud is envious, and one who's envious is proud. Of course, in this world, practically everybody is proud. Prabhupada told a little story. Prabhupada story time. He described when he was young, his father wanted to take him to the Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra. And so there's a train that goes directly from Calcutta to Puri. So he booked a ticket and got on the train. And Prabhupada described that, as you know in India, that there's sometimes the train stops and briefly and pulls out, and sometimes it stays longer, unloading cargo, whatever they're up to. So it was one of those longer stops. So Prabhupada, little boy, got off the train, went on the platform, and he saw this poor couple, and they had a burlap cloth and some pieces of discarded wood. And they laid out the cloth, and they were carefully counting their discarded wood pieces as they were wrapping them up so they could take them to a marketplace or whatever they're going to do. And Prabhupada said, seeing this, from this I could understand even a pauper is proud of his penny. Little boy. And that's what he saw when he saw that situation. The people that have next to nothing, they're proud of that too. And people that have something, and people that have a lot of something. And there's a tendency, a conditioned soul's tendency. You don't have to be proud, but it's a tendency. And where there's pride, then there's naturally envy of someone that has something that you don't have. You're proud of what you have, and you commonly. It's a contamination of heart. So she has both. Pride and cheating, greed and cunning, anger and envy. There comes her harsh speech, and Dhruva just happened to be in the harm's way. So he got treated very cruelly, unnecessarily. And this is just making a connection between the first few verses of chapter 8 and then the story. So Dhruva felt very hurt. Here's the words that she spoke. Very nasty words. My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap. My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not from my womb, but of another woman. Doesn't even say her name. Therefore, you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you will have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. And then, when you are favored by him because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb. Now, what a 5-year-old boy understands about this kind of talk, I don't know. But he certainly understood she was being nasty. Essentially, what she's saying is, you have to die, worship, die, and if you're really fortunate, you can take birth from my womb. Now, when Dhruva heard this, now we're going to go to analyzing her pride. The reality of the situation is Krishna can give deliverance from the cycle of birth and death. However, Suruchi is saying, if you get the mercy of Krishna, you can take birth from my womb, which is better than liberation. So she's
I don't think so.
she's a prideful lady, thinking herself in certain ways at least bigger than Krishna. And Krishna is put down, that is, he who is the giver of liberation has to award birth from my womb. So she's reacting to a situation that's disturbing to her. Her son is not going to become the next king. Then there's Uttanapada's reaction, and it is a reaction. As a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily. Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. So he's reacting. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother. Now, why was Uttanapada just ignoring his son and being indifferent to him? And the explanation is given. This image here is Hridaya Dorbalya. It's the same language used in Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna isn't ready to do his duty. That's a Hridaya Dorbalyam is weakness of heart. That's how Prabhupada has translated it. And it's due to undo excessive attachment to his younger queen, and as a result, even he knows what the right thing to do is, he doesn't do it. That's what weakness of heart does. You know, but you don't do. Why? Weakness of heart. In his case, the weakness of heart was his excessive attachment to Suruchi. If I say anything, she won't like me. And I want her favor, and so I won't say anything. And the result of it was his prescribed duty was being neglected. That of a father, that of a king, to give protection. That's a different kind of reaction. And then the third profile is his mother, Suniti. And instead of reacting, she responds. I've grown to have enormous appreciation for her quality. It doesn't say specifically that she's a pure devotee, but all of her qualities indicate that she's a pure devotee. And she guides her son very expertly. Yesterday evening we discussed text 8 from chapter 8, Canto 4, chapter 8. Prabhupada listed 6 benefits from hearing the story of Dhruva. This was one of them. It generates a feeling of pure devotional service in the hearts of the hearers. And as you hear about Suniti, maybe that will happen to you also. A devotee like Suniti, she is moved by compassion, and she directs that compassion in a beneficial way. So here's what happened. When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. Queen Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents, who had heard all the harsh words of Suruchi, related everything in detail. Thus Suniti also became greatly aggrieved. Now this is underlined purposefully because it's in the next slide. she is empathic towards her son. And one of the first signs any mother will do with her child is crying, they place the child on the lap and hold them, try to comfort them. So she's a mom, that's what she does. Now she's going to hear what her feelings are, aside from her comforting her son. She's feeling aggrieved. For Suniti, the incident was unbearable to her patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire, and in her grief she became just like a burnt leaf and so lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright lotus-like face filled with tears. So she's experiencing negative emotions because it's part of the place where we are. It's okay to have a negative emotion because it's part of the place where we are. It's how you respond to the situation and the emotion connected to the situation that makes her exalted. First of all, she's empathic towards her son. She's a mother, so that's her first thought. And her first response is a non-verbal one. She just comforts her son. And she doesn't react, that is, impulsively, here's a situation, and she wants to like scream or yell or do something impulsive. But she wants to look towards higher principles and find a solution. So this is a distinction between reacting, that's on the left, there's the problem and it fries your brain. And there's a response situation. These ideas are taken directly from people that do counseling. People that are heading towards a depression episode or in the midst of one. How to respond as opposed to react. So this is just Suniti is profiling this for us. There's a little saying from Henry Ford, don't find fault, find a remedy. Besides, he made a lot of money in the motor industry. He was a vegetarian. He was a believer in reincarnation. We don't know if he read Bhagavad Gita or not, but he had some similar ideas. Here's one of them. She was also breathing very heavily, and she's looking for solutions, but she couldn't find the solution. And so, not having that outlet, a practical solution, she wanted to do her motherly thing, which was pass on character to Dhruva. So here's what she said. Take shelter of higher principles. Ma mangalam tata pareshu mamsa. Because it's okay. My dear son, this amangalam. Don't wish for anything inauspicious for others. Because he's in this, she knows her son, I want to get back. So, don't wish inauspicious things for others. Anyone who inflicts pains upon others suffers himself from that pain. So, in other words, you'll create bad karma by wishing ill for your stepmother. Don't do that. when in stress management, they teach, this is a little saying, life throws rocks at you and it hurts. That's how it starts. And then the fault finding, the reacting tendency is, you so-and-so, you did this to me, and fault finding the cause of that which hurts, that which threw the rock at you. What she's saying is, well, here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Oh son, do not find fault in others, because those who have given suffering to others previously will receive the same in this life. Or in other words, don't find fault in your stepmother. You have experienced the results of sins you have committed in your previous births. Since the person who gives suffering to others in a previous life receives it back in this life. So you're getting the fruit of your own misdeeds. Acceptance of the instruments of our own karma is the message. A little Prabhupada story. Does anybody here ever hear of Peter Burwash? Prabhupada follower, Peter Burwash. He's not initiated, but he's a several decades long follower of Prabhupada, and he's a motivational speaker. He's written books on these things, and every year for maybe a decade, he was the keynote speaker, because that's what he does professionally. He's a motivational speaker. He was the keynote speaker at the Festival of Inspiration in New Vrindavan. Every year they would have a big festival. Several hundred, 400 or 500 people, whatever. And I heard him say this little story I'm about to tell you almost every time I heard him speak, because it made a big impression on him, and he wanted to share that with others. So when his introduction to Krishna consciousness was in Hawaii, and at that time he was reasonably wealthy. He wasn't just a tennis pro, but he was a teacher of tennis pros. He had a tennis pro school, and he had finance. So he somehow got introduced to Krishna consciousness. When Prabhupada came to Hawaii, he would be treated with some special care and would have audience with Prabhupada. He had like a relationship with Prabhupada. They would sit and they would discuss. It was very connected. And one time he saw the temple needed some money, so he gave $500. And at that time, $500 was a lot of dollars. More than, because many of us had left our career path and were just doing full-time service in the temple. And he was a householder and he continued, so he was making reasonably good money. And so he gave some money to the temple. And shortly after, or some days after he gave this money to the person at the temple, the person went away and took the money. So next time Prabhupada came, they had their exchange. In the course of the exchange, he told Prabhupada what happened. And Prabhupada's answer was very significant. His first response was, that is not very good. That behavior is not to be condoned. And then he said, but you should not blame the instrument of your own karma, which was like a shocker. Don't blame the instrument of your own karma. So the person that stole the money, Prabhupada was telling him, stole his money because in the past you stole somebody's money. Now he didn't belabor the point. and it stuck in Peter Purwash's consciousness. There's another very similar example. It's a longer story, Prabhupada's story, but it has to do with Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Some of you may have heard his name. African-American, long story. He grew up in a ghetto in Cleveland, and it was during the time of the civil rights era, Martin Luther King and all that. So Ivy League schools were giving free tuition to underprivileged people from ghettos, black people. So he got a full scholarship to Princeton University. And he graduated the valedictorian of the class. And he was the president of his graduating class. He was like heading on the trajectory for a grand career. And somehow, one of our book distribution parties from New York visited Princeton University, got a Sri Upanishad. He read it. And he wanted to meet the author of this book. So he came to the temple from Princeton University to New York. He heard that Prabhupada was coming, he met Prabhupada, and he became a devotee. He left all of that, became a devotee. And after spending some time becoming a devotee, he found out there was racial prejudice in the Hare Krishna movement. And so one time he had the opportunity to speak with Prabhupada, and it was this $64,000 question. He wanted Prabhupada to know, your teachings are way up here, and the consciousness of your members are down here. And the way he told this, I heard him tell it twice, it was like a momentous event. Is like not like testing Prabhupada, but Prabhupada's answer just blew him away. He said, that is not very good. But if you feel victimized, then you're no better than they are. Meaning, if they're in bodily conception of life, should you be in the bodily conception of life? Don't be in the bodily conception of life, or you're no better than they are. So that's so one option is react, and the other option is respond. You can choose higher principles. So the misfortune that had come to Dhruva, that his stepmother was so nasty and said what she said, the lesson that he's being told by his mother, not like she's callous, she's just elevating him to a place of higher principle. Prabhupada explains it in relation to the story of Maharaj Parikshit draping a dead snake around the neck of the sage, Shamakrishi. Prabhupada writes, Canto 1, the devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves. Now, Dhruva was all about avenge. He wants revenge. I want to get back. And his mother was also feeling hurt. We'll hear some more. But she wasn't in the revenge. She's looking for practical solutions and staying with higher principles while doing so. Another reference coming shortly. So she says, my dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual. That is, the factual was take of the worship of Vishnu or Narayana, when her part is accept the karma that's coming your way. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit on the same throne as your step-brother Uttama, then, higher principle please, give up your envious attitude and immediately try to execute the instruction of your stepmother, the good part. So, she is like a Paramahamsa. She's in a mother's body, but she's taking gold from a filthy place. And the filthy place is Suruchi, and the gold is take shelter of the personality of Godhead. This is a graphic that I didn't do, someone else did. Envy is like a hungry demon with lots of sharp teeth, which can eat away any positive qualities. Here's the same principle from Bhagavad Gita. The source of this is a devotee named Adi Purusha. He teaches Bhakti Shastri in Vrindavan. And I came to know about this because he was visiting in Potomac, that is Ananda Vrindavan, the temple president there, taught in Vrindavan Gurukul for some years. And so she knows Adi Purusha, so he periodically comes to visit the Washington temple. And he was teaching this. He had a seminar on Bhagavad Gita, and this is his work product. It didn't look the same, but the message is his. When we don't accept an undesired event, it becomes anger. When we accept it, it becomes tolerance. When we don't accept uncertainty, it becomes fear. When we accept it, it becomes adventure. When we don't accept another's bad behavior toward us, it becomes hatred. When we accept it, it becomes forgiveness. When we don't accept another's success, it becomes jealousy. When we accept it, it becomes inspiration. And here's the punchline. Acceptance is the key to handling life well. So this is her advice. The situation that happened, don't get involved in envy and retaliation and all that. Just accept. And in that acceptance, then you can take the goal. That is, take shelter of the personality of Godhead. She had her own acceptance. This is Vishwanath saying, my weeping has been written on my forehead by the Creator since birth. Interesting. That is, she is neglected. She's accepting that neglect. She's not resenting anything. She's not resenting the Suruchi. She's not resenting Uttanapada. It's easy if you're neglected to feel resentment. She's not. It's just destiny at work. But she wants happiness for her son. So she knows the path of happiness, and it doesn't come from reacting, it comes from responding. It comes from taking shelter of higher principles and taking shelter of the one who's the shelter of higher principles. That's the lotus feet of Krishna. Just like a female bird gives shelter to the two little birds. And they're feeling quite okay because they're in her shelter. Without further delay, you must engage yourself in worshiping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She's not only pointing him to higher principle, she's pointing him to the ultimate destiny. She's a great mom. If you desire to be seated like your brother, then without envy of Suruchi, execute the true words uttered by her. Worship the lotus feet of the Lord. Suniti now is going to glorify Krishna's lotus feet in very, very graphic ways. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is so great that simply by worshipping His lotus feet, your great-great-grandfather Brahma acquired the necessary qualifications to create this universe. Although he is unborn and is chief of all living creatures, he is situated in that exalted post because of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom even great yogis worship by controlling the mind and regulating the life air. Your grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, executed great sacrifices with distribution of charity, and thereby with unflinching faith and devotion he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By acting in that way, he achieved the greatest success in material happiness, and afterwards achieved liberation. Well, he's still alive, but he'll achieve liberation, which is impossible to attain by worshipping the demigods. Notice we're almost done with the chapter. I'm going to go to text 24 and that completes the chapter. My dear boy, you also should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is very kind to his devotees. Persons seeking liberation from the cycle of birth and death always take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service, becoming purified by executing your allotted occupation. Just situate the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your heart, and without deviating for a moment, engage always in His service. So what she's doing here is she's performing the function of Guru. It's a third category. There's Diksha and Shiksha Guru. This third category is Vartma Pradarshika Guru. That's why the image is taken. The mother is pointing to something, and the daughter is, oh, I see that something. So the function that she's performing is very significant according to the Yamunacharya, great Acharya in the Sri Vaishnava tradition. This is an essential element to taking shelter of the Personality of Godhead, and that is someone who is dear to the Personality of Godhead, showing you the path and making the recommendation on your behalf to the destination, to the Personality of Godhead. That's what she's doing. The situation is really awful, and she's feeling awful, and she understands the awfulness of the situation. She's not reacting. She's looking to higher principle, and she's looking to the ultimate destiny of the soul, and passing that on to her dear son, Dhruva. Dhruva trusts his mother because she's trustworthy, and he takes her words to heart. He does what she says. The Lord is affectionate to His servant. This is paraphrasing her message. He will have more affection for you, His servant, than the affection of millions of mothers like me. And when He shows His affection upon you, then everything is yours. This is returning back to Godhead, Gopal Kumar. Fix Him in your mind, purified by Bhakti Dharma. That's His message, her message. And 2 more verses. His eyes are like lotus petals. Many demigods, such as Brahma, seek the pleasure of the goddess of fortune, but the goddess of fortune herself, with a lotus flower in her hand, is always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord. So Dhruva hears what she's advising him. He considers it very carefully after deliberate consideration, and with intelligence and fixed determination, he left his father's house. He headed for the forest to look for Vishnu. React versus respond. So respond, this is a mode of goodness position. And mode of goodness readily leads to transcendence, far more so than passion and ignorance. We know from Bhagavad Gita, there's several expressions of anger. What makes anger? What gives rise to anger? From Bhagavad Gita.
Lust.
Come lost.
Yeah. And where does lust arise from?
Greed.
Contact with the mode of passion. Kamesha, that's lust. Krodesha, anger. Rajoguna, mode of passion. Samudbhava. By association with the mode of passion, kama, strong desire, lust. And when that's frustrated, anger. So that's the react. So life throws rocks at you and it hurts. It's not denying the event, it's not denying the emotion connected to the event. Then you take the rock that life threw at you and you toss it in the air a few times and you consider, what's a proper response to this situation? What's a higher principle of life that I can take shelter of? Because there's nothing I can do about the situation. Life, it happened. Life threw rocks at me. Whatever that might be. And then there's an emotion connected to that event. So now, managing negative emotions is an important part of reaching transcendence. It's an important part of life. Now, many people don't handle the negative part, the unhappiness part of the duality thing where we are. Because there's this and there's that. There's always this and there's always that in this place. So if you want to go to the place where there's no duality, you have to go towards the mode of goodness more. Cultivation of that quality by choices that you make. And one of those choices is how you deal with the negative emotion things that come from situations that are outside of your control. I'm sure when Suniti married the king, she wasn't thinking, I can't wait to be neglected by my husband. I'm really looking forward to it. But it happened. And it's not like she loved it, but she just accepted it. No, it's not that everyone has to do the same thing that Suniti does. It's just describing a principle. When you accept something, doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you're not caught in this reactive mode, anger, retaliation, resentment, fault-finding, blaming, yada, yada, yada. You don't have to do that. You can do that, that's a choice. But the higher position is you accept the situation is what it is, and then there's the emotion connected to the situation. Now what are my options? Practical, emotional, so being in the capacity that I am, a sannyasi that travels around, I get to hear a lot of stuff about people's life threw rocks at them and it hurts. So I've learned a little bit about pastoral counseling, that's what it's called in the world. And what I'm sharing is just, it's in the story. And that's not just a story, but this is an actual history, and there's an actual Suniti that's Supermom. And she's able to help her son because of her own quality. She also has negative feelings about her situation. She doesn't love being neglected. But she's choosing to stay with higher principle. The result of that staying with higher principle for her is she goes back to Godhead. She serves her function as mother. Fantastic. Her function carries Dhruva to Vishnu, and he gets there. And when he goes back to Godhead, she goes back to Godhead. Not like just because she did that nice service for Dhruva. It's just her quality. She's also a great personality. So, very practical. Let's see if there's some discussion. We can get the lights on.
Did I go?
He's too busy with his camera. Yes.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for the nice class. So, with the weakness of the heart that we saw earlier, the King Romapada, that's something I feel that even in the day-to-day life, there are many situations where there could be that you know what's the right thing to do, and there are situations where you don't really act on the 100% the right thing to do kind of a thing, where we go kind of a little bit wishy-washy or things like that.
Correct.
So how can one improve on that? Improve?
How do we improve?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. Good sadhana, good association, and practice, abhyasa. Right? And the practice is, advice, practice-wise, is here's a set of things that I could improve on. Let me take a look at the list. And what's one that's really doable? Kind of like a low-hanging fruit kind of thing. And I'm just going to pick that one and just stay with it. Improvement thing. Not like the whole big list and then I just get bewildered. Just something. And do it consistently. And work on it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one of his writings, Tattva-Videka, he says, retraction of bad habits can take 5 years to completely take care of one. But what happens when you take care of one is the tide that lifts all boats. That determination and steadiness and cultivation on one thing helps improve the other things. But rather than just like try to improve all the things, just stay focused on something and do that something effectively. That can be a couple of something. It's just take something and stay with it. A real simple example, performing of austerities helps control the mind and senses. That will also help. What is the message for this story? It's good to make a Kartik Vrata, because a Kartik Vrata lasts for a whole month, and it's not like do it on an Ekadasi day. It's a whole month. You do the same something every day for a whole month. Etc. So that's another principle. That is, aside from controlling the mind and senses with some regularity, with practice and discipline, something that's spiritually beneficial, let me do that, and with some consistent basis. There are two women that told me they were advised, because now I'm pregnant, I'm supposed to make sound vibrations so the child within my womb can get spiritual benefits. So I started reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And I didn't have a taste for Srimad Bhagavatam, but I read so many cantos during my pregnancy, and now I just hope I stay with it after the pregnancy. It's because it's now become a habit, becomes something that I really enjoy. So there's strength from the positive things, and you borrow strength from the positive things to help in the not so positive things. The weaknesses, the Hridaya, Dorva, all the other things. So they're just some points in overcoming that weakness. In Arjuna's case, it was just Krishna's words. I mean, there was some back and forth, but Krishna's words did it. There's an example at the end of the Dhruva story, where the words of Swami Manu, he stopped. Something that he knew he shouldn't be doing, he was doing anyways. But just the words of Swami Manu, he stopped. It checked him. So having good association and being able to hear from people who are wise and not attached to the weakness of heart that you may be undergoing. Having such friends, that's good. Or spiritual authorities to stay faithful to. That gives us strength beyond our own strength. Anything else? Yeah.
Harish Maharaj, regarding reaction and response.
Uh-huh.
So in my case, if I in a temple or any Vaishnavas, they say something, even if I get angry, I always never react, I always respond. I'd say it's fine from a Vaishnava point of view. But if I'm in a hospital, I'm suffering, that way I'm thinking it's my past karma, fine. But in office, if I didn't react, they think they're taking it for granted. So in that case, we need to react, right?
Well, no, you need to respond. You make the response should be appropriate for the situation. The response can be passive, or the response can be in a calm voice, say something. The response can be in a stern voice, say something. But it's coming from a place of respond rather than react. React means I'm carried away by the situation and reacting to the situation, moved strongly by the modes of nature. That's react. Now, just in this last week, someone shared with me in their workplace, they have a kind of a bullying boss. I think, all the people under that bully boss, they get harassed by the bully boss because that's what he does. He's a bully. And it creates dissension towards him from the workers and amongst the workers because they just, the victim becomes the perpetrator. It just makes the atmosphere in the workplace really bad. So what to do? So he got some advice, and the advice worked. He spoke in a calm but a strong voice, and I forget what it was that he said. That was, is it really necessary to do like this, because the result of your doing like this is that. And what you really want is the job gets done better, and here are some other ways you can get the job done better. And then 2 days later, the man came back and apologized. Said, I was thinking about what you said. Although I'm a bully, what you said was right. Now, some bullies aren't going to respond and say, you're right. So Super Soul gave him an assist. But it's from the place of responding, not from the place of reacting. Because before, it was just like react and go, I don't want to work in this place, this guy, then you become, if you do the, just like, raise your voice and say something heavy, because that's the only thing they can listen to. You know, maybe that's needed, but you become part of the problem, rather than part of the solution. You don't want to be everybody's doormat. You just wipe their dirty feet on you because you're a passive person. You know, in the temple also. You know, you have appropriate response. A Vaishnava, appropriate Vaishnava response. If someone steps on your foot, you don't say, ouch. Can you please be more careful? That hurt. It's not, because if they're going to step on your foot, then maybe the next guy, the next guy, the next guy, and that doesn't, it's not okay. So this remaining silent isn't the position of response. This equals that. Just be a passive entity. Respond means you're making choices. How you're going to say, what you're going to say, and how you're going to say it, and what you're going to do, and how you're going to do it. You may pause out for a bit for the right time. You're making choices appropriate for the time, place, circumstance. That's responding. Yeah. Yes.
Maharaj, one of the slides, there was an interesting, I think, purport from Romapada or comment that when Suniti was talking to Dhruva when he came back, she said it's because of your own karma. So when someone is really hurt, and at that point you say that's the karma, that's what you're facing, it doesn't go well, right? It's negative.
Yeah. This is not a cookie cutter, solution for everything. She knows her son. And it is paraphrased in this Vishwanath's commentary, explaining what she's saying. She didn't say it's your karma, so no worries. She didn't say that. But she's who she is, and her son is who her son is, and she knows her son. And there's a relationship where he has all confidence and trust in her, and she's a fully trustworthy person. When those dynamics are there, you're able to say things you can't say otherwise. And it's not advisable to say otherwise, because it'll create, another fire. But she's training her son, knowing her son, in higher principle. Don't ill wish towards others. Now, what Vishwanath did is took the other way around. This is coming to you because of your having ill-treated others in the past. It's not explicitly what's being said. It's implied by what's being said. He says both. You ill wish towards others, that's going to come back. Now it's coming back means you were ill-wishing towards someone. victim because of being the perpetrator. It's like, Prabhupada said to Peter Washington, Bhakti Swami, don't make the mistake, don't be drawn into the action-reaction combination, the swirl of the material energy. Be aloof, be detached, be transcendental. But to be transcendental, you need shelter. So take shelter. Now, also, these verses are not like the entire dialogue. She didn't say anything else. That's all that she said. It's just, and again, she knows her son. She didn't say, give up this desire to have a kingdom. She knows her son. He's not going to give up. And the higher principle is, don't do this out of envy and retribution against her. That's not good.
Just a thought that came when he was mentioning. In response, you don't lose sight of the goal. Like Suruchi said, serve the lotus feet of the Lord. In reaction, you get lost in the woods.
Yeah, that's right. And to not lose sight of the goal, the mode of goodness, which is clearer than passion and ignorance, is really helpful. So take shelter of higher principles that foster the mode of goodness, and then you can stay fixed on the goal, regardless. When you're actually in shelter, then anything can happen and it's okay. I mean, it's not like yummy, but it's okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
That's a good question. So when Suniti was speaking to Dhruva Maharaj, like you said, she knew how her son was.
Yes, she did.
She knew. But,
Mothers do. Yeah.
But perhaps she also knew that her son would totally absorb her advice and act upon it.
Yes.
But he was such a young boy.
Yes.
And when he left home,
It's against motherhood. Yes.
and went into the forest.
Yes.
Wasn't she worried that there were
Yes.
so many dangers ahead?
She's a mother. But you know what? She had complete faith in Vishnu. That's her capacity. It's astounding, isn't it? Like what mother could,
Yeah, that's
wild, what to speak of wild animals. He didn't even give them a samosa, go off into the forest. It says later, this is Vishnu speaking. While you were in the forest, your mother was always praying to me for your protection. Because, in other words, she's so dear to me, just her praying, I extended my protection to you. You were safe because of her faith in me and her as the well-wisher for you. You were protected by her prayers for you. Now, what mother's going to think like that? But Suniti was able to think like that. And she knew her son. He's not going to take no for an answer. She didn't even go there. There's certain, in the world, I was told this by somebody, there's certain personality types, and one of those personality types, if you say no, you can become more determined. So, she didn't say no. She just said, which the motivation should be. enough protection. She's out of this world. Her prayer protected Dhruva. And his devotion also. But where did he get that devotion? From her. Pretty amazing, huh? So it's not a cookie cutter solution. Your child comes to you saying, "Mommy, yeah, just go to the forest and find Vishnu." It's describing a principle. And so it's the two main things, three main things. Empathy. She looked to not what her need is as much as what her son's need was. She gave a very practical, the only practical solution. Vishnu alone can take care of it. Vishnu took care of Brahma, Vishnu took care of your grandfather. He'll take care. This is an otherworldly option, and you're determined. There's only one. I don't know any other. There are other Puranas that describe this, and he asked, "Great, where do I find Vishnu?" And he says, "I'm just in a palace. I don't know how to find Vishnu. But I've been told that sages, they go to the forest and somehow they find Vishnu." Okay, I'm going to the forest to find Vishnu. He doesn't know how to find Vishnu in the forest. Narada comes. But, it's the beginning. Find Vishnu. Take shelter of him. And this material thing that you want, he's the source of everything. You can have him.
Power of faith.
Yes. Yes. And with one who has that faith, you can make your faith stronger. No, obviously he has something going for him before his mother said what she said. But when she said what she said, combined with whatever his quality or innately already was, it took hold. Great faith. When he speaks to Narada, he's really clear. It's not just he wants his father's kingdom. He wants a kingdom better than his father, better than his father's father, better than his father's father's father. Like a little kid stomping his foot. But that's, what's a kingdom better than Lord Brahma? It's the spiritual world. He wants that kingdom. Little kid. Doesn't even understand about these things. But it was a Catholic spirit. He was really determined. And Vishnu is the only way I can get what I want. I'm going to Vishnu. But he also had, the acharyas say, because of the gift of his mother, he now has this desire to become a genuine devotee and get his kingdom. And gradually the mixed part of his motivation subsides as he gets closer and closer to the goal. You want to say something further?
Also the fact that Suruchi, says that you only got to pray to Krishna. If you want to change the situation, the only way for you out of this is to pray to Krishna.
Yeah.
Maybe she already set that thought in Dhruva's mind.
Nah. She's like elevated people think. She was just speaking as elevated people think. She's covered by pride, envy, all these destructive forces. She can't see anything. She just speaking. Empty words. Empty words don't go in. Purity is the force.
So we see the contrast here of destruction and,
Yes, you got it. That's verses 2 through 4, you're going to get this handout sheet, and Brahma creates destructive forces, and some people pick them up and do destructive things. I can think of a few people in modern society that do destructive things through the destructive forces. And there's some people that choose another situation, they make another choice with whatever the situations are that are confronting them. Destructive people do destructive things, and elevating people do elevating things. So we should become like Suniti. Learn that from her. She's the profiling for us, role model. Okay. You have something?
I'm just thinking about Ajamil also and intentionally saying Narayana's name finally. So could we compare that to Suruchi?
Not exactly. That's not exactly. The correlation is that the personality of Godhood is all pure. If he's in the picture, one becomes purified. It's, it's quite different. Okay, what's next?
Shadam.
Prashadam,
Do you have the handout? Or where do we get the handout?
okay. Right here, it's over here in this box.
Okay.
So, I'd like, I'm requesting two things. I'm going to bring some Mahaprashadam and just say yes. And you take, so then, this handout is, if you do it this evening when you're sitting together, that helps take something that's fresh and, bring it inside. If not, some other time. But it's just to connect, because from having done this, made this presentation very exhaustive, thoroughly, previously, a very important part is not just information, but that which is transforming. You take the understandings and bring it home into your heart. So, let's see what happens. Maybe we'll see some of you tomorrow.
Yeah.